So let's talk about what matters. So the framework that I've built and that we use with advisors and clients all over the world, many thousands of people, is what I call the 4 C's.
Okay.
Connection, control, competence, context. In my reading of history and philosophy and theology and sociology and lots of disciplines, I think that there are 4 sources of contentment. And there's this old famous line from a century ago that all models are wrong, but some are useful. I think this model is pretty useful. So 4 sources of contentment. Connection.
Yep.
We are deeply wired with the need to belong. When we don't have meaningful relationships, we feel less than. The second is control. We have a hardwired sense of the need for autonomy, independence, freedom, opportunity. That's part of us. The third source of contentment is what I call competence. This is being good at something that's meaningful to you. We all gain a lot of value in our lives, psychic value, from our jobs or our hobbies or our vocations. And then the 4th C is context. And that refers to the idea that people who are connected to something bigger than themselves tend to lead more meaningful lives. And historically, that's been 2 things, faith and place. Whether you call it religion or spirituality or faith, that's a very big thing. And then the second thing, place, it's your hometown pride. It's your patriotism. It's something like that. When you look across the 4 C's, which I could also describe as belonging, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, that's the hard work that actually goes into good financial advice and is like out of the blue, like, wait, what are we talking about? But until you have at least a little bit of sense, and by the way, you can think about this thing for 5 or 10 minutes while you're just walking around the block. You don't need to sit at the library and write a thesis about yourself. We all have a sense of what relationships are meaningful to us, or what our sense of freedom, what we want that to be, and so forth. With just a little bit of insight into what deeply motivates us, we can then clarify a lot of this market noise. And you stop caring about the hot stock. You stop caring about portfolio optimization to the 3rd decimal place. And you just get to the point where it's like, okay, these are the things that matter to me. Some of them, in some cases, are free. Like I have a best friend. My friendship with him is free. He actually lives in a different city, so maybe it costs a little bit because we're going to travel together. But for the most part, there are key elements of what makes me deeply contented that are free. And then there are other elements that are very, very expensive, in some cases unaffordable. But until I have a sense of what's meaningful to me, where I find my significance in this world, it's really hard to plan my money life.
Welcome back to another episode of The Advisor Journey. I'm your host, Sartan Yarnway, and let me just tell you, I'm sitting with one of my favorite people in financial services. All right, I'm gonna hype you up a little bit, okay? Brian Portnoy, I don't know if you remember the first time we met. Probably not.
I think I do.
We were in San Francisco, and you were speaking at a conference.
Yes.
And I was just this guy with a podcast, young, that had just started his financial services firm. You sat with me for lunch. I think I might have been late to the meeting. You waited for me patiently, and you just told me, like, hey, you can do it. So 1, I want to say thank you. 2, thank you for all the things thereafter, jumping on podcasts, flying out, always extending your hand to include me in your project. So thank you. You're amazing, and I'm glad to have you here. Welcome, Brian Portnoy. Thanks for being here.
Sarte, it is always a pleasure. One of my favorite folks in the whole industry, so thank you. It's my privilege to be here.
Awesome. Now, your book, Shaping Wealth, and just everything that you've been able to build has had a profound impact on me and my family. So before we kind of jump into the idea of shaping your own wealth, I want you to just introduce yourself to the people that are watching today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I'm Brian Portnoy. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Shaping Wealth. We're a learning and engagement company for the global wealth management industry. And what does that mean? It means we work with financial advisors and their clients on figuring out where money fits into a meaningful life. I published a book in 2018 called The Geometry of Wealth. And that was actually my second book in behavioral finance, which is a fancy term for the psychology of money. And my first book was about investing. And when I finished that book, I'm like, you know what? There's a bigger picture here. And as my kids were growing older and I was thinking about my own career, I did want to write a larger reflection or meditation on where money fits into a meaningful life. So I wrote this book called The Geometry of Wealth, and I coined this term funded contentment. The idea that true wealth is the ability to underwrite a meaningful life. That concept and the book generally was really well received, very humbling and cool experience, published in multiple languages all over the world, and then was the inspiration for Shaping Wealth. So I took the book, Geometry of Wealth, transformed it into Shaping Wealth, and you and I became friends along the way. We've made lots of friends along the way, and here we are.
I'm so intrigued with the idea of where money fits into a meaningful life. So you wrote a book about investing and all of the fancy sort of financial services stuff, and then you got into this place where that incorporated emotional intelligence, behavior, right? Talk to me about the journey to get there. What did you notice? Like, what made you go in that direction to really talk about making money fit into your life versus having money control your life?
Yeah. So when I had an investing career for about 15 years or so, which was fun and met some great people, got to travel the world, investing in securities and mutual funds, hedge funds, and building portfolios, working with clients, one of the number one rules was, let's take the emotion out of investing.
Yeah.
So when, the markets are volatile and you're feeling skittish and you have this urge to sell something, to do something, okay, so let's take the emotion out of investing. So what I learned, at a certain point was that is a very silly thing to say. It's the equivalent of walking into a room and saying, let's take the gravity out of the room.
Right.
It's just everywhere. Human behavior is social gravity. It's everywhere and always. There's no getting around it. And so the topic can't be, let's get the emotion out of investing. Let's accept that emotions are everywhere and always. It's social gravity. And then let's explore how do we use those emotions as a source of information that then helps us to not only make better decisions, but understand ourselves. And so that was kind of a gateway insight into this field of behavioral finance. There's a field of psychology called positive psychology, fancy term for the science of happiness. And when you get into positive psychology, you see amazing evidence-based research as to, well, what does a happy and meaningful life look like? And it seemed like there was such an opportunity to map those insights with our financial decisions. And that's where I've taken things, where my team and I have taken things. And what's really cool about the wealth management industry now, advisors and the clients that they work with, is that we can increasingly have really significant, not awkward conversations about happiness and meaning, as distinct from narrow conversation, what's going on in the market? What's my prediction for the economy and GDP growth? I mean, frankly, who cares?
Yeah.
Secondly, even if you do care, no one can predict that stuff anyway. What we do have control over are the stories that we tell about the lives we want to lead and go in that direction.
I feel like there's a small group of advisors that are equipped to have those conversations because we focus so much on the how and which investment vehicle achieves X goal. But the conversation that you're having is like the antithesis of what most advisors are trained to do and the antithesis of what a lot of clients think an advisor should do, right? So do you find that people are equipped to do this, or they have to be intentional about how they look at money within their lives?
I actually think there's a deep interest in having these conversations by both clients and their advisors, but folks don't know how to start the conversation. I sometimes think about financial advice as bad theater, where the advisor plays the role of a market expert and an economist, and the client plays the role of someone who pretends she cares.
Yeah.
And the back and forth is just not particularly, illuminating.
It's not pleasant at all.
Yeah, it's not a great conversation. Let's step back. There's one, from an evolutionary point of view, there's really one question that all humans are asking every second of every day, mostly subconsciously, but occasionally consciously. It's simply this: am I going to be okay? We are wired to survive in dangerous, uncertain times. And even though from a physical point of view, we're not in the Serengeti, we're not fighting wildlife or anything like that. We're in a very privileged point of view. From a material perspective, psychological safety is very real.
Yeah.
And so the human is so finely tuned to perceive and navigate danger. And so we're always asking this question, am I going to be okay? In some ways, sort of the cauldron of financial advice, that place where the good stuff happens, is honest, authentic conversation between advisor and client about sort of that question, am I going to be okay? Because the answer can come in lots and lots of different formats, but the skills that are involved, at least from the advisor side, have to be augmented. And so, the firm, as you well know, the firm that I've built trains advisors on how to have those conversations. From the client's point of view, I know for sure, because we've worked with thousands of end clients over the years, when they have that conversation about, am I going to be okay? How much is enough? Where does money fit into a happy life? They walk away from that meeting thinking, wow, that was different. That was better. So in my view, the referral-worthy moments for advisors, it's not when you discover the new hot tech stock.
Yeah.
It's when you make your client feel seen and heard and understood. It's at that moment that your client, she leaves and she goes and tells her sister or her coworker or her neighbor, man, Desarty talked to me like a real person. We didn't talk about the stock market. We talked about life.
Yeah.
And figuring out where money fits into the broader life narrative, that's the good stuff.
What do you think people are doing wrong? Like the end clients of advisors are doing wrong. Obviously, advisors have to learn how to start the conversation, but a lot of people can't receive the conversation either. So what are some I guess telltale signs that somebody is not funding their contentment? And why don't you introduce the concept of what funded contentment is?
Yeah, so let's start with funded contentment. So there's a fork in the road for all of us between being rich and being wealthy. Being rich is the search for more. Now, we're hardwired for more from a genetic point of view, and as we should be, because back to that survival instinct, if we're not competing, if we're not getting ahead, we're falling behind. And so more is hardwired into us. The problem is, and psychologists have a term for this called the hedonic treadmill or hedonic adaptation, is that, well, when you get more, you want more. To parallel from one of my favorite TV shows, Mad Men, Don Draper, the lead character, hero or anti-hero, depending on how you want to cast him, he said that happiness is the feeling right before you want more happiness.
Yeah.
Same thing with money. You have enough until you get $1 million, you want 2. You want 2, you want 4, and you want 4, you want 8, and so on and so forth. So rich isn't bad, but it's incomplete. Wealthy is the other fork in the road, and that's funded contentment. That's true wealth. The way I define it, the ability to underwrite a life that is meaningful to you. The ability to underwrite a life that you define as meaningful now and into the future, and that you update through life's inevitable ups and downs. When any of us, just normal, regular people, enter a thought process about money and where it fits into our life, that funded contentment concept goes beyond just being a concept. It becomes a tool.
Yeah.
It's a 2-blade Swiss Army knife. 2 blades, funded and contentment. Generally, as an industry, as individuals, we do it backwards. We think about the money first, and then can that buy happiness? No, let's flip it, right?
Yeah.
Let's start with what is the source of contentment. And, I can share with you, I think, a very simple and elegant model for what humans have discovered as driving true contentment over their lives across history and culture. Let's think deeply about where we're finding contentment. Period, end of paragraph, end of chapter, no thought on money. And then, secondly, once you have a sense of where that contentment is coming from, then let's ask the question, can I afford that? How do I underwrite that? What does that cost? It's a flip to the way almost everybody does it. It's a simple but profound change in our mindset toward wealth.
Right. I love that. I got a question in terms of like getting to that framework. It's some work before that has to happen, right? And when you're working with clients, at least when I was working with clients, a lot of advisors skip that before part to help them fund their contentment. So I think maybe this is an idea for a book, but like the audit, comes first. And there's things that you kind of got to cross out before you get to funding. Even if you're raising money for a startup, you're going to go through these audits. People want to see your data room. Like you are acting like this right now. We want to fund this. What advice do you have for clients that might be watching this podcast right now that need to go through that audit part of their life to be able to say like, you know what, this is what actually brings me joy?
Yeah, so let's talk about what matters. So the framework that I've built and that we use with advisors and clients all over the world, many thousands of people, is what I call the 4 C's.
Okay.
Connection, control, competence, context. In my reading of history and philosophy and theology and sociology and lots of disciplines, I think that there are 4 sources of contentment. And there's this old famous line from a century ago that all models are wrong, but some are useful. I think this model is pretty useful. So 4 sources of contentment. Connection.
Yep.
We are deeply wired with the need to belong. When we don't have meaningful relationships, we feel less than. The second is control. We have a hardwired sense of the need for autonomy, independence, freedom, opportunity. That's part of us. The third source of contentment is what I call competence. This is being good at something that's meaningful to you. We all gain a lot of value in our lives, psychic value, from our jobs or our hobbies or our vocations. And then the 4th C is context. And that refers to the idea that people who are connected to something bigger than themselves tend to lead more meaningful lives. And historically, that's been 2 things, faith and place. Whether you call it religion or spirituality or faith, that's a very big thing. And then the second thing, place, it's your hometown pride. It's your patriotism. It's something like that. When you look across the 4 C's, which I could also describe as belonging, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, that's the hard work that actually goes into good financial advice and is like out of the blue, like, wait, what are we talking about? But until you have at least a little bit of sense, and by the way, you can think about this thing for 5 or 10 minutes while you're just walking around the block. You don't need to sit at the library and write a thesis about yourself. We all have a sense of what relationships are meaningful to us, or what our sense of freedom, what we want that to be, and so forth. With just a little bit of insight into what deeply motivates us, we can then clarify a lot of this market noise. And you stop caring about the hot stock. You stop caring about portfolio optimization to the 3rd decimal place. And you just get to the point where it's like, okay, these are the things that matter to me. Some of them, in some cases, are free. Like I have a best friend. My friendship with him is free. He actually lives in a different city, so maybe it costs a little bit because we're going to travel together. But for the most part, there are key elements of what makes me deeply contented that are free. And then there are other elements that are very, very expensive, in some cases unaffordable. But until I have a sense of what's meaningful to me, where I find my significance in this world, it's really hard to plan my money life. And to a point that you made earlier, we focus so much on the what, which is the portfolio, and so much on the how, which is sort of the game plan or the financial plan, and spend relatively little time on what precedes all of it, which is the why. And we want to somehow get to the why. Now, we're not philosophers sitting around just scratching our chins and thinking about the big picture all the time. But an examination of the why drives a better understanding of the how, which then drives the better understanding of the what.
You think we can get there in the industry? Do you think that we can actually flip the script and people will now start with that, like, why? Versus all the other things,
Not entirely, no. If you learn anything in Econ 101, it's that incentives matter. And so depending on what your incentives are, you're going to drive in that direction. It's still an industry in which, the selling of a product is central. And that's not a bad thing because we need mutual funds or insurance or an estate, an estate document or whatever it is. And so you can have the right product for the right people. But if your incentive is to go in that direction, it's going to sort of, if not close down, it's going to narrow our ability to focus on the why. What's really cool is that the industry has evolved, especially in the, we have clients all over the world, but I see it in the US, Australia, Canada, UK, and there is from a very small base, there's a growing number of advisors who don't have those, sort of commission-based incentives, and they're really focused more on asking these bigger questions so that they can drive true financial planning. So I'm a little bit optimistic, but I'm also a little bit of a skeptic. So it's also a massive industry. It's a massive industry when you think about the various forms of advice and financial advice and investment advice. So you're going to have a whole range, and on the demand side for individuals, some of them don't want to go there. Some of them, you know what? I got 1.2 million and I want it to be 2. Can you just make that happen?
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to you about any of this goofy stuff. You don't need to know anything about me. I want $2 million.
Yeah.
And the why is none of your business. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's totally fine.
Yeah, for the advisors that are leaning into this, right? What outcomes have you seen? I know a lot of advisors are watching this podcast right now, and they're like, maybe this is something I should implement. What are the benefits you think for an advisor and client to really begin to explore that why?
Yeah, I think you have a stickier client base. I think you have a client base that's also more willing to tell your story, because it's pretty random in our ability to pick a outperforming stock or build a portfolio that does slightly better than the market or sort of your neighbor's portfolio. That comes and goes. If you're having these sorts of deeper conversations with people and it really lands, and your interest is not only in helping people, but as a capitalist driving a higher margin profitable business, then your ability to frame these conversations and then scale them across your organization is going to lead to stickier assets, higher wallet share, more referrals, ultimately higher revenues. So what we've seen with our client base, financial advisors. And in some cases, it's small advisory firms. In other cases, it's firms with thousands of advisors. Is that to the extent that they implement, whether you call it human first or human centric or behavioral advice, I use those interchangeably, that can really deepen the conversation in ways that has material commercial impact. And with the advent of things like AI, we're going to see further commoditization in some of the sort of basic tasks that advisors have done over time. So the things that advisor could have competed on in the past will become so commonplace that you need to find the higher ground.
Yeah.
The ultimate higher ground is deepening trust, building relationships. And so that's what I'm talking about, because I can abstract from all the fancy neuroscience and behavioral finance and just say to Sarte that all we're trying to do here is have better conversations about the things in life that truly matter. Better conversations. That's all we really want, because that's where relationship and trust happens, and that's where we move things forward.
Let's go through that exercise, right? An advisor's listening and they're sitting back at their desk right now while they're inputting, documents into Hazel for Altruist, right? And they're like, hey, I'm listening to Brian and I really think I should probably start doing more of that.
Right.
How does this advisor start to have those conversations? What would you recommend to them?
Yeah. Well,
come to the class.
Yeah. No, the shameless thing to say is that this is what we've built. I think a world-class learning platform all about, and so we have a lot of free resources and other programming that people can tap into. But the broader answer is that you can give yourself permission to go there. I think the number one advantage that every advisor has is authenticity. I think generally in a world of 8 billion people, a very crowded and noisy world, we focus so much on originality. We focus so much on differentiation. How am I sort of doing my planning process, or how am I communicating my value proposition differently than the 100 other firms with websites that have the exact same verbiage, the couple on the beach wearing linen, walking hand in hand, please. I think it's really hard to stand out in that regard. What's closer to home, but a little bit harder, maybe from an emotional perspective, is just leaning into who you are and finding your true fans. Finding your authentic voice in the delivery of whatever it is that you think is important for your clientele, given your, sort of in the weeds knowledge of your community and the people that you like to serve. So maybe not the answer that people are looking for, but I want folks to, anchor on permission and authenticity. Give yourself the permission to go there. Get a little bit out of your comfort zone to have these conversations, to talk to people about their why and what really matters. And then recognize that, you're not going to be Desarte or Brian or anybody else. You're just going to be you. And you're going to find, your voice. I often say in our coaching programs, which, you've been through, there can be a lot of content, and we give you fluency with a lot of different concepts and tools and worksheets and things that you can use. And at the end of the day, we've given you a lot of words. You have to find your own voice. We give you words, you find your voice. And when you find your voice, people will come to you and they won't leave.
Mic drop. I would also say, it's going to be uncomfortable in the beginning, right? I think sometimes when advisors are doing something different but beneficial, that discomfort, they don't like that. You know, I don't have to go there.
Right.
I can keep doing what I'm doing and I will still grow.
Yeah.
But I think you kind of got to lean into that discomfort a little bit to get on the other side, which will benefit not only you, your firm, but your clients the most. So
yeah, I think that's precisely correct. And I think part of the, you know, the broader arena that we're playing in right now is emotional intelligence. You know, for better or for worse, everyone's IQ is fixed. Nobody here, nobody listening is going to get smarter or dumber ever. We have the IQ. EQ is flexible. EQ is like cooking or your vertical leap. A little bit of practice can make you a little bit better. Doesn't mean you're going to be a Michelin star chef, doesn't mean you're going to be Michael Jordan, but you can be a little bit better. And there is an avalanche of credible research in organizational psychology that shows that firms that invest in emotional intelligence training, EQ training, tend to do better in terms of customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction and loyalty, you know, better cultures, ultimately more higher profitability. So there's a lot of like granular evidence to suggest the practical importance of EQ. Beyond those sort of, you know, data points, when you get into the weeds as an individual, we want to understand that the 4 dimensions of EQ, which are self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills, they're all connected to each other. And we can think of them almost as a CrossFit experience where each of those 4 is a station with a bunch of different exercises. The one thing I'd leave with, you know, anybody listening, and not whether it be an investor or an advisor, probably the most important insight I've learned in coaching this over a number of years now is that we all want to be empathetic because we all want to be kind. But the real source, the engine behind empathy, is self-awareness. That's an uncomfortable moment because in order to understand where others are coming from, you sort of have to have your own sense of self. And you know, because you're involved in a book project that we did together a few years ago that was telling, you know, the quote unquote money story of prominent financial experts such as yourself. Most financial experts have really never written down what money means to them. That moment of self-exploration can be such a door opener in terms of what you know about yourself and creates an ability to listen and hear others in a way that you couldn't before.
But how do you go there? Like, you know, some people just aren't tuned up. They don't want to touch those parts. So for the advisor or the client that's listening, like, what's the 1, 2, 3 of starting to really explore yourself? Because, you know, I have conversations with friends all the time. They're like, I feel like I'm discovering what I actually like. You know what I mean? So talk to me about that.
You know, so let me say it in a very goofy way. We're not humans having, and we're not humans doing, we're humans being. Okay, so what does it mean to be? Well, it means that we want to have a sense of what's truly important to us, our values, our beliefs, ultimately our identity. And the word identity is a challenging word. It could be a political word, but I like to think of it as a multifaceted, almost like kaleidoscope that you look through with different colors and different configurations. I have a dozen or 15 different identities. I'm a friend, I'm a father, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a dog owner, I'm a husband, I'm a Steelers fan, I'm lots of things. And those identities are meaningful to me. And so merely at the level of who am I and thus what's really important to me, I don't think that's a terribly heavy lift because we can all go there quite quickly. Like, who am I? What's truly important to me? And when you go down that path, you learn a lot. Now, there are structured exercises in terms of telling your story, especially your money story, and there's good ways to do that. But just being open to the idea that your values and beliefs and identity have a material impact on your portfolio allocation. And there's a couple dots along the way that connect that. But that sense of who am I and do I want a small cap fund? They're actually they're a lot more connected than we might think.
Brian, what is your hope for the industry? What is your hope for shaping wealth and how it can impact advisors and clients?
My hope for the industry is that we can have more of these conversations. Like, it really does boil down to better conversations about the things that truly matter. Money is the most emotional topic in our lives. There's a ton of evidence on this. American Psychological Association does surveys on stress and anxiety in America, and so, more so than, religion, politics, marriage, divorce, mortality, money is the number one most emotional topic in our lives. And it's also the thing that we want to least talk about.
Wow.
A lot of us know with our best friend, what's their health status? What's their relationship status? Do you know what they make? Do you know what their balance sheet looks like? Pretty high chance the answer is no. You know nothing about that. Even with our closest folks, we don't know anything about that because we don't. So creating an environment through, various, wealth management firms or financial technology providers or, learning platforms like Shaping Wealth, creating sort of an openness to talk about the things that really matter, going to places that we might not want to go and recognizing that once we go there, we're actually going to be okay. Yeah, my hope is really just for better conversations. And so with Shaping Wealth, it's to drive those conversations. We're a small firm in a massive industry trying to make a difference.
Well, you're doing a good job, Brian. Where can people find you?
ShapingWealth.com is our website. That more or less covers it all. Personally, I'm active on LinkedIn, the most useful but boring platform out there in social media world. So, but really, if you want to understand our mission, the things that we do, ShapingWealth.com is the place. And I also add one thing, which is that we have a free behavioral insights content platform called Compass. So for financial advisors, you are the guide, we are your compass, and that's compass.shapingwealth.com, or just go to our main website and you can click through. And we have thousands of podcasts and workshops and things to read and do and think about that will drive your practice forward and really motivate those better conversations.
Amazing. Thanks, Brian. And thank you all for tuning in to this episode of The Advisor Journey. You know where to find us. Until next time, we'll see you here again soon. Thank you for listening to The Advisor Journey by Altruist. Brokerage-related products and services are provided by Altruist Financial LLC, a member of FINRA/SIPC. Results may vary. Altruist and its affiliates do not provide tax or legal advice.